A point was made on a talk show where Atheist and Skeptics magazine publisher Michael Shermer was a guest that the fastest growing religious group in America are the nuns. Of course, that was tongue-in-cheek for those who checked the box nun on a survey of religious affiliation. Well, Mr. Shermer went on to concede that the statistic doesn't necessarily mean that 20% of Americans are now atheists. But he added jokingly that it easily means that 20% of America is well on its way to being atheist. That's bad logic. No, it doesn't, Mr. Shermer.
Oh, doesn't it, though? It certainly shows a trend in that particular direction. If people are saying they have no religious affiliation, then how come they aren't checking a box marked other instead of none? Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. There is a new channel out there called Questioning Atheism, which, as of this posting, is far too wimpy to allow comment or criticism on its videos. But we're gonna go ahead and do it anyway. Especially since those videos reveal how religious people seem to think, perhaps too much.
Unfortunately, you can interpret a poll in any way that suits your particular fancy.
Incoming irony alert!
But what it does mean is that those polled, 20% had become disenchanted with the irrelevance of the church in society and in faith, at least in the ones that they were aware of.
It means nothing of the kind, and boy did we just see some weapons-grade assumption being thrown about. First, the only thing that 20% means is that those people have no religious affiliation. That's all it means. Without those polled giving their own personal reasons for their answer, you have no idea why they're not religious. Second, it makes the baseless assumption that being part of a religion is the default for everybody, and that not being affiliated with a religion means that you've left one. It assumes that the entire 20% started out religious, and that's not even slightly true. Third, it makes the assumption that the people who did leave their religion did so for the same reason some people no longer vote. Being grumpy with your church for no longer having tons of influence over the rest of the world is only one of many reasons people might leave it, and it's by no means the one most frequently cited by those who've done it. But this sure does reveal a lot about how some God-botherers think, doesn't it? The sheer arrogance of this particular bit of non-reasoning is both sad and kind of disturbing.
May I also suggest, from much other observation, that a good portion of that 20% have found other ways to satisfy their worship of God and relevant ways in which to follow Christ.
And now we have the completely baseless assumption that that entire 20% used to be Christian. Apparently Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Wiccans, Scientologists, and all of the others never leave their religions. What's Christianity doing wrong? And what is much observation? This isn't one of those, oh hey, they were nice to each other, clearly Jesus at work things, is it? Because newsflash, Chester, it doesn't take having Christ in your life to not be a complete dick. In fact, sometimes it does the exact opposite.
It means that religious affiliation doesn't equal vitality and importance of faith in everybody's life. So they no longer consider themselves religious.
Okay, but where is your evidence of this? How do you know that someone still believes in Christian doctrine and Christian mythology while no longer attending church? And how do you know that that person doesn't still call themselves Christian, both in everyday life and on this poll? Once again, we have ourselves a double-wide buttload of assumption going on here.
Again, it does not mean, as Michael so smugly inferred, that 20% of America is well on its way to becoming atheist.
Oh, but doesn't it? At least by implication. Let's assume for just a moment that you're right, and these people are saying nothing more than that they're no longer affiliated with a certain church, but that they are in fact still spiritual. Are you really saying that that's not a stepping stone to becoming no longer religious at all, at least for some of them? Oh, they're still religious, and they'll stay that way whether they go to church or not. To quote you from before,
that's bad logic. Be a skeptic. Publish your own magazine. But let's have some integrity instead of suggesting an atheistic, unfounded spin.
I'm not sure you could even cut the irony with a machete, a chainsaw, or a high-powered orbital laser.
If a person wants to consider themselves religious, spiritual, or not, is their business.
Yeah, it is. But let's remember what started this whole discussion in the first place.
A survey of religious affiliation.
And you can call this a baseless assumption if you want to, but I feel pretty confident in suggesting that taking this survey was not mandatory.
But please, don't falsifies and philosophize the meaning.
Okay, the irony is reaching toxic levels.
In my experience, a person can leave the church, leave religion, and still not leave a personal faith in God and Christ.
Not saying they can't, but I have to ask, what percentage of people do? Can we get some hard data on this? I want numbers. But isn't this really what's wrong with religious thinking? I mean, the guy flat out says that this is the case.
In my experience,
Well, so what? This proves what exactly? And this thinking dovetails nicely with another video from the same guy.
I'd like to ask you to appeal to simple common sense.
Simple common sense, he says. Not logic, not reason, not evidence. Common sense.
In the following minute, is what you see the result of random universal mechanics, or does it logically imply an intelligent designer?
Yeah, see, in the next minute he's gonna show us pictures of animals and shit. Raise your hand if you're sick and tired of that argument. Whew, most of you. Right.
I didn't say, does it prove a fundamentalist Christian approach to creation theory? That's for an entirely different discussion. I simply asked, doesn't it make common sense that what you will see is the result of intelligent planning and purpose rather than natural, random, unplanned, and unpurposed mechanics without any conscious intelligence involved?
So he asks us if it makes sense. But you know what? There are a lot of things in this universe that don't make any sense at all. It doesn't make any sense at all that the faster you go, the closer you approach the speed of light, the more time compresses for you. Time goes faster as you go faster. Common sense would suggest that all that would happen is that you'd cover more ground more quickly. Why on earth would anyone suspect that time dilation would happen? But it does, and we can prove it. So what is common sense, really? It's not sense at all. It's an emotion. It's what feels right. Like a lot of religionoids say, they know God is real because they've felt him in their heart. And isn't that what's really wrong with religious thinking? It's not thinking at all. How can you convince someone of something that challenges their worldview if their worldview is built entirely on feelings instead of facts? What we have here is a dumbing down of critical thinking and a preference for feelings over facts when constructing one's view of the real world, and the implication that doing so is somehow a virtue. This attitude is pervasive in religion, and probably why it persists. Emotion is often quite stronger than logic or reason, and is also far less rational. Obviously, emotion isn't completely useless. It's often quite beneficial in social situations, but where it's worse than useless is when trying to determine what's real, what truly exists, and how the universe functions. So until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. And remember, if it can't be in your hand, it's all in your head.